Dragon Ball has a system. It is not always logical by the standards of real-world physics, but it is internally consistent within its own framework. Power levels, energy signatures, emotional triggers, transformation thresholds, training multipliers. There is an established logic, and that logic creates the rules of the game. Then periodically, a Saiyan does something that breaks those rules entirely, not bends them, breaks them, shatters the assumption of what is possible, surprises the other characters, surprises the gods, surprises the audience, and forces the entire Dragon Ball universe to recalibrate what its ceiling actually is. Today we are going through every Saiyan transformation that shattered what everyone thought was possible. Not a list of all transformations. We have done that. This is specifically the ones that broke the established rules of Dragon Ball's power system at the moment they appeared. And the rules they broke are as important as the transformations themselves. This is Amimek. Subscribe and hit notifications. Dragon Ball Super is coming back with 2 new anime. Dragon Ball Super Beerus dropping fall 2026 and Dragon Ball Super The Galactic Patrol in production. Every transformation in this video will be relevant to what is coming. Rule 1 broken. Super Saiyan, the impossible legend made real. The rule that existed before Super Saiyan, transformations in Dragon Ball were power multipliers. The Great Ape was 10 times base power. Various Kai techniques could amplify combat output temporarily, but the ceiling of individual Saiyan power was understood as linear, training harder, pushing further, accumulating more base power. The Super Saiyan legend was explicitly framed as a myth, a story told by Saiyans about an ancient warrior of impossible power. Vegeta, the prince of all Saiyans, believed in the legend but never expected to see it. Frieza destroyed planet Vegeta precisely because he feared the legend might be real. Goku broke that rule on Namek. The emotional detonation of Krillin's death, his closest friend killed by casual energy flick from Frieza, the being responsible for Goku's entire people's genocide, bypassed every previously established threshold. No gradual build, no training breakthrough. Pure grief converted directly into 50 times his base power. Golden hair, teal eyes, an aura that pressed down on the atmosphere of Namek itself and made Frieza, who had never feared anyone in his life, genuinely afraid for the first time. The rule that broke, mythological impossibility, cannot survive genuine emotion in Dragon Ball's universe. The 1,000-year legend became real because someone felt the right thing with enough intensity. This established Super Saiyan not just as a transformation, but as Dragon Ball's first proof that its own stated limits were negotiable. What most discussions miss about Super Saiyan, Goku, and Gohan's full power. Super Saiyan training in the hyperbolic time chamber was the real intellectual breakthrough. The form itself was not the innovation. The innovation was discovering that a transformation with enormous energy drain could be trained into a permanent state of zero drain by living in it continuously. That lesson, that any technique's weakness can be neutralized through mastery rather than raw power, became the philosophical foundation of every divine transformation that followed. Rule 2 broken. Super Saiyan 2, a child did it first and did it better. The rule that existed before Super Saiyan 2. Among the Z fighters, Goku was the ceiling. He was the one who pushed everyone else. He found Super Saiyan first. He developed full power Super Saiyan. He introduced instant transmission. Goku was the reference point. Every training arc measured progress against where Goku was. Gohan broke that rule at age 11. At the Cell Games, watching Android 16 be destroyed after a genuine speech about loving life. Watching Cell laugh. Watching his friends be tortured by Cell Juniors simultaneously. Watching the one adult who had consistently believed in his hidden power be crushed. Gohan's emotional reservoir didn't overflow. It detonated. Super Saiyan 2 erupted from a child, surpassing every adult warrior who had trained their entire lives. And the first thing that New Form did was casually dismantle multiple Cell Juniors that had been giving the entire roster of Z fighters serious trouble, and simultaneously, effortlessly, while talking. The rule that broke: Saiyan potential is not linear or proportional to training time. The breakthrough moment for a Saiyan is not a function of how long they trained, but of how deep their emotional reservoir is and how completely it empties in a single moment. Gohan, who hated fighting, who trained reluctantly, who was dragged along on adventures rather than pursuing power, had a deeper reservoir than anyone because he never spent it. When it finally released, it released all at once, and the result surpassed everyone. Dragon Ball's power scaling has never fully recovered from this implication. The character with the greatest stated potential, Gohan, remains inconsistently developed for the rest of the series precisely because the show cannot fully commit to what his ceiling should logically be. The crackling bioelectricity of Super Saiyan 2 was a deliberate visual signal by Toriyama, divine lightning, the kind associated with gods rather than fighters. The form looked different because it was meant to feel categorically different from everything before it. Rule 3 broken. Super Saiyan God. Power cannot be individual. The rule that existed before Super Saiyan God, Saiyan transformations were individual achievements. One Saiyan, one breakthrough, one result. The Super Saiyan legend itself was about a singular warrior of pure heart reaching a singular threshold. Transformations were personal, shaped by each Saiyan's specific emotional state, their specific training approach, their specific moment of extremity. Even fusion, the closest Dragon Ball had come to combining Saiyan power, was about creating a new individual entity, not about collective achievement. Super Saiyan God broke this rule completely. The ritual required 6 righteous Saiyans, 5 pouring their energy into a 6th simultaneously. The transformation was not achieved through individual effort. It could not be achieved through individual effort. The resulting form looked nothing like previous Super Saiyan variants: smaller, leaner, red-haired, calmer. Not bigger and more intense, refined, compressed, and it operated on a completely different energy signature, God Kai, that Beerus could sense differently from Standard Ki, that Whis identified immediately as divine, that Goku himself described as feeling different from the inside. The rule that broke. Divine power requires collective ritual in Dragon Ball. The individual Saiyan breakthrough path leads to Super Saiyan 3, enormous power with enormous drain. The collective path leads to something qualitatively different, cleaner, more efficient, and connected to a realm of power that individual effort cannot access regardless of intensity. This is why the Super Saiyan God ritual feels spiritually significant in the way it does, because it is structurally about Saiyans choosing to be good together rather than strong alone. The form's power comes from shared righteousness rather than individual extremity. Then Goku and Vegeta learn to access God Ki naturally through training with Whis, demonstrating the second half of the rule break. Once divine power is introduced to a Saiyan through the collective ritual, it becomes accessible individually through training. The ritual opens the door. Training keeps it open. This is the bridge that made Super Saiyan Blue possible. Rule 4 broken. Super Saiyan Blue. God Ki meets the Super Saiyan system. The rule that existed before Super Saiyan Blue. God Ki and the Super Saiyan transformation were incompatible systems. God Ki is refined, compressed, divine. The Super Saiyan transformation amplifies through emotional intensity and releases energy in visible, explosive ways. Combining them should have been impossible, like trying to add wildfire to surgical precision and getting something that is both. Super Saiyan Blue broke this rule by being exactly that combination and making it work. Goku and Vegeta, through sustained training with Whis internalizing God Ki as their new baseline. discovered that applying the Super Saiyan transformation to a God Kai foundation did not create chaos. It created perfect amplification. The God Ki foundation provided the control, refinement. The Super Saiyan system provided the multiplication. The result, a form that exceeded Super Saiyan 3's raw power without Super Saiyan 3's catastrophic stamina drain, because God Kai's efficiency prevented the energy hemorrhage that made SS3 unsustainable. Did not have God Ki. He had something that functions similarly under the specific conditions of that moment. The weight of an entire timeline's worth of loss, grief, and desperate protective instinct compressed into a single combat state. Super Saiyan Rage cannot be trained. It cannot be replicated in normal conditions. It emerged because the conditions that produced it were unrepeatable, but its existence proves that Dragon Ball's divine power boundaries are more permeable than the established rules suggest. The rule that broke: there is no ceiling on what Saiyan transformations can integrate. The assumption had been that divine power and mortal transformation techniques operated on separate tracks, one or the other. Blue proved the tracks could merge. And once you establish that principle, every subsequent combination, Blue Kaioken, Ultra Instinct applied to emotional Saiyan energy, Ultra Ego using God of Destruction energy, becomes structurally predictable. The rule was, you stop when you reach divine power. Blue said, you do not stop. You take divine power and apply Saiyan methodology to it and see what happens next. Rule 5, broken, Super Saiyan, Blue evolution. Pride passed its own ceiling. The rule that existed before Super Saiyan Blue evolution: transformation thresholds require recognized emotional triggers. Fear of death triggers Super Saiyan in certain cases. Grief triggers it in others. Rage is the most common. These emotional states are large, identifiable, and point towards something outside the self. The threat of losing someone, the loss of someone already, the desire to protect against an external force. The transformation emerges in response to an external catalyst. Vegeta broke this rule during the Tournament of Power against Jiren. He was losing. The universe was about to be erased. His family, his world, everything he had learned to value, it would all be gone. These are standard external catalysts. But Vegeta's evolution did not come from fear of those losses. It came from the offense of being beaten in front of them. The specific Saiyan pride that cannot accept defeat when there is still something left in the body. Not for tactical reasons, not for survival reasons, but because the Saiyan identity is constituted by the refusal to collapse while there is still ground to stand on. Pride as identity rather than ego. The form that emerged, Blue evolution, with its more intense aura and elevated power, was powered by a psychological state that has no precedent in Dragon Ball's transformation history. The rule that broke: not all transformation triggers are about what you might lose. Some are about what you refuse to be. Vegeta's Blue evolution emerged from a state of pure self-definition rather than external threat response. This conceptual break is the direct predecessor to Ultra Ego, which takes that same idea and develops it into an entire combat philosophy. Blue evolution was the prototype for the philosophy Beerus would eventually teach Vegeta directly. Rule 6 broken, Super Saiyan Rage, divinity without divine training. The rule that existed before Super Saiyan Rage: God Ki requires either the Saiyan God ritual or direct training under a divine being like Whis. Future Trunks received neither. He never participated in the 5 righteous Saiyans ritual. He never trained with Whis or an angel. He trained under Gohan in the future timeline with conventional methods. By established Dragon Ball Super rules, Future Trunks should have a ceiling at standard Super Saiyan 2 level, possibly approaching Blue adjacent power through exceptional training. But without the God Kai foundation that makes Blue what it is, Super Saiyan Rage broke this rule. The form trunks manifested during his battle against Fusid Zamasu displayed a dual aura structure. The golden Super Saiyan energy combined with electric blue highlights that suggested blue adjacent power without the blue foundation. More importantly, the form was powerful enough to channel the combined hope and remaining life energy of every survivor in future Trunks' timeline into a spirit sword, a blade of pure condensed will that cut through Fusid Zamasu's immortal body. A mortal Saiyan who did not have God, Ki slashed an immortal fused God with a manifestation of hope. The rule that broke, extreme emotional necessity combined with a Saiyan's fundamental adaptability, can access adjacent frequencies of divine power through pure pressure. Trunks did not have God Ki. He had something that functioned similarly under the specific conditions of that moment. The weight of an entire timeline's worth of loss, grief, and desperate protective instinct compressed into a single combat state. Super Saiyan Rage cannot be trained. It cannot be replicated in normal conditions. It emerged because the conditions that produced it were unrepeatable. But its existence proves that Dragon Ball's divine power boundaries are more permeable than the established rules suggest. Rule 7. Broken Ultra Instinct, an angel technique in a mortal body. The rule that existed before Ultra Instinct, divine techniques require divine nature. Hakai requires being a god of destruction or having their training. Angel-level combat ability requires being an angel or receiving direct angel instruction. Ultra Instinct, described by Whis as a technique even gods of destruction struggle to master, was assumed to be fundamentally inaccessible to mortal fighters regardless of training. Goku broke this rule against Jiren in the Tournament of Power by accident, pushed past every limit simultaneously: body, energy, technique, will. His consciousness briefly evacuated the driver's seat of his own combat. His body began moving independently, defense and offense operating without the fractional delay that conscious thought introduces between perception and response. Attacks that should have hit him missed because his body had already moved before Jiren's intention completed. His strikes landed in spaces that Jiren's defenses had not covered because his body identified and exploited those spaces before his mind could process the thought. The gods watching reacted with visible shock, not at his power level, at the technique. Beerus, the god of destruction of Universe 7, reacted to seeing a mortal touch Ultra Instinct the way you might react to seeing someone walk through a wall. Not impossible, apparently, but so outside established expectation that even divine beings needed a moment to process what they were observing. Ultra Instinct at this stage was partial and unsustained, sign rather than mastered. Goku could not maintain it, could not access it intentionally, could barely function after the state passed, but the rule was broken. The technique existed in a mortal body, however briefly. And once a Dragon Ball rule breaks once, the logic of the series dictates it can be developed, refined, and eventually mastered. Every subsequent Ultra Instinct appearance was the series working out the implications of that first breach. Rule 8 broken, true Ultra Instinct, emotions inside the emotionless technique. The rule that existed before true Ultra Instinct requires emotional emptiness. This is stated plainly by Whis and confirmed by every angel's demonstrated use of the technique. The body acts independently, precisely because the mind is not generating emotional noise that the body has to filter. Anger, grief, joy, attachment, all of these create interference patterns that slow the gap between perception and response. Ultra Instinct is the removal of that interference. An empty mind allows a purely reactive body. This is the technique's defined operating principle. Goku broke the technique's own rule against gas during the Granola arc. He had been training Ultra Instinct, but kept losing the state when his emotions surged. His love of battle, his Saiyan competitive nature, his attachment to the people he was fighting for. Every time the emotion rose, the technique's requirement for emptiness broke, and the state collapsed. The conventional solution would be to suppress the emotions more completely, train the emptiness more deeply. But Goku realized, in the moment against gas, when accepting his Saiyan nature, rather than fighting it, produced an unexpected result, that he could do the opposite. He incorporated the emotion into the technique, rather than removing it. True Ultra Instinct maintains the body's autonomous movement, the core physical benefit, while the mind operates at full emotional volume. Goku fights with his fighting spirit, with his joy, with his full Saiyan nature expressed, and the body still moves with Ultra Instinct's precision and independence. This should be a contradiction. The technique's entire design is predicated on the mind being quiet. Goku found a variant where the mind is loud and the body is quiet simultaneously, a state that operates on a different philosophical track than the angel version and produces results the angel version cannot achieve because the emotional energy adds something to the base technique rather than interfering with it. No angel developed true Ultra Instinct because angels are designed for emotional neutrality. Their version of the technique is complete within their nature. Goku's Saiyan emotional depth made his version impossible for them to arrive at, and once he arrived at it, it became something only he could use. A technique that is definitively and exclusively his. The rule broken. A technique defined by emptiness can be rebuilt by fullness. The outcome is different from the original and better in the specific context of a Saiyan warrior who fights best when he fights with everything he is. Rule 9 broken. Ultra Ego. Damage as a power source. The rule that existed before Ultra Ego. Taking damage weakens a fighter. This is so fundamental to Dragon Ball's combat logic that it is never stated. It is just assumed as a baseline physical reality. Every fight in Dragon Ball is a contest of who can deal damage faster than they receive it. Power-ups exist to increase the speed of that equation in your favor. Every form in Dragon Ball, from Great Ape to Super Saiyan 3 to Blue, operates within this framework. You hit hard, avoid getting hit, maintain your energy, and eventually deal more than you can receive. Vegeta broke this rule with Ultra Ego. The form that emerged from his training with Beerus, from studying the God of Destruction's nature and philosophy rather than techniques, operates on an inverted equation. Ultra Ego feeds on battle damage. The more punishment Vegeta takes, the stronger he becomes. Not marginally stronger, meaningfully, combat relevantly stronger. In his battle against Granola, a being who had wished himself into the strongest non-god in Universe 7, Vegeta took what should have been career-ending damage and came back more powerful each time. In his battle against Gas, the same mechanic applied. Devastating hits became escalating strength. The rule that broke, combat mathematics in Dragon Ball always assumed damage, was negative. Ultra Ego proved that damage can be a power source, provided the philosophical framework supports it. This is the most structurally disruptive rule break on this list. Every transformation on this list broke a different rule. Together, they tell a story about Dragon Ball's actual nature, a universe where established limits are not ceilings but floors, and the rules that define what is possible are always one emotional breakthrough away from being rewritten. Comment below, which rule break hit the hardest for you, and which one does the community most unfairly ignore? We read everything. Subscribe to Amamek. Dragon Ball Super is back, and we are here for all of it.